Golf in 2025 didn't just give us highlights, it gave us moments.
Early second round for Dietrich, and that one, talk about getting... The long journey is over.
Some were historic, some were chaotic, and a few genuinely changed the direction of the sport.
And that is really well judged. Oh, look at this.
You gotta be kidding. Yes!
From career-defining wins to rule changes, controversies, and unforgettable shots, this was a year we won't stop talking about anytime soon. Starting from January and working our way all the way up to December, here are the top 25 golf moments in 2025. Number 1. TGL actually launches. And it all kicked off with the announcement that had felt miles away for years. TGL was finally opening its doors and putting golf under arena lights. I'll be checking it out for sure. Number 2. Rory wins at Pebble Beach. Next up came some actual golf with a familiar name, Rory McIlroy. The Northern Irishman turned up to Pebble Beach looking relaxed, loose, and in the zone. There's just something about this place that brings out his best. The tempo, the shot shapes, the confidence. And when Rory gets rolling early in the year like this, the rest of the field better look out. Number 3. Rory wins the Players. Because only a few weeks later he rocked up to TPC Sawgrass with the same calm confidence and did exactly the same thing. Loves a win, doesn't he? Sawgrass has a habit of humbling everyone eventually, but Rory looked completely at ease dancing around trouble all week. Number 4. Atlanta Drive wins TGL. Another group that danced around trouble all season was Atlanta Drive. The combo of Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantley, Billy Herschel and Lucas Glover in the TGL stepped up and won the inaugural season of Tiger and Rory's new competition.
Atlanta 0 for 6, putting from 10 to 20 feet. This is from 17 for eternity.
The atmosphere, the celebrations, the reactions. Honestly, immaculate vibes. I think this was the moment everyone stopped asking, will this work? And started asking, okay, what's next? Number 5. LPGA Pace of Play Crackdown. And then came the moment that didn't involve a trophy, but definitely got everyone's attention. The LPGA decided enough was enough and finally put real teeth into pace of play enforcement with their new policy. The LPGA player president Vicky Getzer-Ackerman announced that the LPGA conducted a thorough review of the current pace of play policy to evaluate and address an issue that has been a source of frustration for players and fans alike. Based on a data-backed approach and direct player input, this policy now acts as a stronger deterrent, ensuring players take warnings seriously before penalties become necessary. And the penalties themselves? 1 to 5 seconds over time is fine, 6 to 15 seconds and you'll get a 1-stroke penalty, while 16 seconds or more and you'll be docked 2 strokes. Actual penalties, actual consequences, no more polite warnings. Some loved it, some hated it, but let's be honest, every amateur golfer on earth suddenly felt personally attacked. I know I did. Number 6. Rory completes the career Grand Slam. And then, history. In my opinion, the biggest moment from 2025, the one that had followed Rory around for over a decade, was finally right there in front of him. If you don't have an ear-to-ear smile on your face right now, are you even human? Because that reaction tells you everything you need to know. The Masters to complete the career Grand Slam. It was the moment so many of us had waited for, and it was simply the best thing ever to finally see it materialize for him. The green jacket's yours, big fella. Number 7. Best shots from the Masters. With that massive weight lifted, it's time to have a look at some of the best shots from the week prior across Augusta. It's the biggest stage of them all, and some of these are absolute crackers. Alright, this is turning into the Rory show, but let's be honest. Who doesn't want to see the big shots from his final charge towards the Grand Slam? Low-key, let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see a video dedicated to his Masters win as well. That's one I'd love to put together. All in all though, Augusta gave us exactly what we'd hoped for. Some incredible shots, incredible competition, and an incredible finish. It's the pinnacle for a reason, isn't it? Number 8. Chevron Championship 5-way playoff. And just when you thought the drama might cool off, the Chevron Championship said absolutely not. Sunday wraps up, and somehow 5 players are heading to a playoff. 5! At this point, it's less a playoff and more a stress test. Check it out.
An incredible.
You couldn't script chaos like that if you tried, and 2025 was only just warming up. Number 9. Scheffler ties the 72-hole scoring record. And if chaos was the theme the week before, control was the story here. Scottie Scheffler turned up and quietly went about dismantling the place round by round, shot by shot. Utter domination. It's a real head-scratcher why he's the best in the world. Number 10. Scheffler wins the PGA Championship. And just to prove that week wasn't some random fluke, Scottie backed it up on one of the biggest stages in the sport, the PGA Championship. That's just normal for Scottie, isn't it? Absolute freak of nature he is. What a player. Number 11. Best shots from the PGA Championship. Now that Scottie's done his thing, let's quickly have a look at what the week prior had to offer, because there were indeed some absolute gems. It's also worth mentioning that there were more than 90 holeouts across the event, which is absolutely bonkers.
Hill off the green.
Number 12. Maya Stark wins the US Women's Open. And then came a moment that felt calm on the surface, but massive when you zoomed out. Maya Stark stepped onto the biggest stage in women's golf and didn't blink. Not gonna lie, I'd feel like that was a 50-foot putt if I were in her shoes. Probably would have missed it too. Number 13. PGA kills starting strokes. And then came a moment that didn't involve a swing, but quietly changed how the season actually works. The PGA Tour officially scrapped starting strokes, simplifying the FedEx Cup format once and for all.
Because I thought the old format created a somewhat confusing situation for the fans because, for example, the last 3 years, Scottie Scheffler has come into Eastlake, the Tour Championship, at 10 under par. He's been number 1 in FedEx Cup points. Number 2 was 8 under, 6 under, 4 under, and down the line. But basically, if you weren't in the top 10, you really had no chance at all to win the Tour Championship, ultimately the FedEx Cup. And so now it's just a regular stroke play event, and all 30 players will have an opportunity to win the FedEx Cup. That was the final tally last year against Scottie Scheffler. Shows up at 10 under par and then goes 20 under on his own ball, Kiana. Ends up beating Colin Morikawa by 4 shots. And if you remember a year ago, the Tour Championship was void of any drama whatsoever. So this is much needed, I believe, when you have the final 30 guys who've played all year long and played the best of anybody else. Now all 30 will have a legitimate chance to win not only a ton of money, but also hoist that FedEx Cup.
Cleaner, easier to follow, no more maths mid-broadcast. It felt like one of those changes everyone pretends they've always wanted, because the second it happened, it just made sense. Number 14. JJ Spawn's 64-footer to win the US Open. And then, Oakmont did what Oakmont always does. It asked a brutal question and waited to see who blinked. JJ Spawn stood over a putt that looked more like a sightseeing tour than a scoring chance. Absolute monster putt. What a knock. 64 feet, on the greens, under that pressure, in that rain. That's what dreams are made of, ladies and gentlemen. Number 15. Best shots from the US Open. And after that, it only feels right to rewind the clock and appreciate what Oakmont delivered throughout the week.
Start this is.
Yeah.
Look out for the hole.
Chance. Oh, come on.
I'm not even lying when I say I've only grabbed a handful here. There were so many darts to pick from.
Runner-up in the U.S. Amateur. And that is really well judged. Oh, look at this.
Whoa, you got to be kidding me.
At the 4th, 6 yards away. has that blade open. A little check release on it. Over the hole now.
Yeah.
Either way.
You get 3 here. Seen 141 yards in here.
Been up and down early. Second round.
Number 16. Minjee Lee wins the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. Only a week after JJ Spawn's heroics, Minjee Lee stepped up at the KPMG Women's PGA and quietly reminded everyone how hard it is to shake her when she's in rhythm. Minjee truly is the definition of precision, patience, and absolute belief. The exact 3 things I most definitely never have on a golf course. Number 17. Cedric Googler's suspension. And then came the moment that snapped everyone back to reality. Cedric Googler, a Swiss golfer in the second tier of Europe's golfing circuit, found himself at the center of a story nobody ever wants to be part of. Googler was disqualified from the Raiffeisenbank Golf Challenge in the Czech Republic after repeated infringements on the greens, specifically for playing his ball from the wrong place on putting surfaces on multiple occasions. But the story doesn't end there. After he was DQ'd, a disciplinary panel met to discuss his actions, where it was deemed he had committed a serious breach of the tour's code of behavior. As a result, sanctions were imposed and Cedric will be banned from the opening 10 tournaments of the 2026 season. Jeez Louise, that's got a sting. And from there, the focus shifts back to the fairways, but the tone doesn't fully reset just yet. Number 18. Grace Kim wins the Evian Championship. From there, the focus shifts back to the fairways, and thank goodness for that, because we need to lift the mood back up. In July, golf delivered something genuinely special. Grace Kim arrived at Evian quietly, stayed patiently all week, and then turned Sunday into a statement. Like the commentator said, eagle, birdie, eagle, on the final stretch of day 4 to force the playoff and ultimately win her first major. That's nothing short of sensational. Congratulations, Grace.
And the dream comes true!
Number 19. Scottie Scheffler wins the Open Championship. To follow that was the final major of the year for the men a week later, and the man you'd expect to see was right there again, Scottie Scheffler. And need I say it again, he won by a country mile. 4 shots clear at the end of the tournament. It's getting a bit ridiculous, Scotty. Number 20. Best shots from the Open Championship. And after a finish like that, it'd be criminal not to rewind and soak up what links golf gave us throughout the week. Simply beautiful to watch. Low bullets, touch around the greens, and creativity you just don't see anywhere else. Port Rush is sensational.
I don't believe it.
Poor connection. That second slope, oh my God. How about that pitch shot?
Darren had plenty of support out there this morning. What a shot. Get in. Oh yeah.
Number 21. Miyu Yamashita wins the AIG Women's Open. And just when you thought the majors had finished delivering, the women's game stepped right back into the spotlight. Miyu Yamashita arrived at the AIG Women's Open calm, composed, and completely unfazed by the moment. Her very first major tournament. What a moment for Miyu. Safe to say, it'll stay with her forever. Number 22. Tommy Fleetwood wins the FedEx Cup. And then came a moment that felt a long time coming. With those rule changes in play that I mentioned earlier, Tommy Fleetwood, a man who's been knocking on the door for years, finally kicked it in when it mattered most. You could see it on his face. Relief, joy, and maybe a little disbelief all rolled into one. The FedEx Cup and Tour Championship are his. Number 23. Europe wins the Ryder Cup. And then came the week where everything got insanely loud, emotional, and messy, which we'll get to shortly. Team Europe arrived at the Ryder Cup locked in from the opening tee shot and never gave Team USA a chance. That wasn't a slow grind, it was a statement. And once that momentum hit, there was absolutely nothing stopping it. Number 24. Ryder Cup crowd turns ugly. But in all honesty, the footage you've just seen hardly scratches the surface of the full story. Because the 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage will undoubtedly go down as one of, if not the most, disrespectful golfing events in history.
Guys, shut the up.
Rory was copping it, but not only him, his wife too. Calling that unacceptable doesn't even cut it. And to be truthful, there are so many more clips and videos that show just how ugly the atmosphere got at times. If you want to see more of that along with some other shockingly disrespectful moments in golf, check out my most disrespectful golf moments of all time after this one. As you've seen though, Team Europe did get across the line, and man oh man did they celebrate like champions. Ryder Cup intensity is part of the magic, but when it tips into hostility like it did at Bethpage, everyone loses. Number 25. Live Golf versus PGA Tour still fractured. And even as the season wrapped up, one thing still hadn't moved an inch. The divide between Live Golf and the PGA Tour remained unsolved, with talks dragging on and tension still simmering beneath the surface. Throughout the year, framework agreements were discussed, deadlines drifted, and players were left waiting, unsure what the future structure of the sport would actually look like. By the year's end, the divide was smaller on paper, but still very real in practice. It felt like the final reminder that while 2025 gave us incredible golf, the sport itself is still very much a work in progress. Fingers crossed some headway will be made in 2026. That'd be something to look forward to. From Rory finally completing the career Grand Slam, to Team Europe getting across the line in the Ryder Cup, 2025 gave us everything. Joy, chaos, history, controversy, sometimes all in the same week. And if this season proved anything, it's that golf has never been louder, messier, or more compelling to watch. If you want to see some of the craziest moments where golfers have hit fans, caddies, and even themselves, click here. I appreciate you sticking around, and as always, thank you for watching.